We're ready. One and two.
Okay, so Friday greetings, everybody. I know that you're all excited about today's discussion about the exam. And I know that you're all very excited about the coursework. So just as a little reminder, the coursework was originally due the 10th of December, and then a grace period was added until the 17th of December. So the 17th of December is the deadline for the coursework. And we will have an extra lab for the coursework on the 14th of December, which is Monday. For those of you with last-minute questions. Today is a discussion of the exam. So if you look on Moodle, we've uploaded two files. One's called Exam Revision Terminology and Resources, and the other one is called Practice Exam Questions. We don't know when the exam is going to be yet. I believe it will be in January of 2021, but I don't know. The exam timetable has not been released yet as far as I know. From what I understand, the exam, you will be given 3 hours for the exam, but I believe there is a larger window of time in which to take it. I'm not sure yet. I think there might be a 24-hour window of time in which to take the exam, but it is a 3-hour exam. So the idea is, at least from my understanding, is to support distance learning. We offer a larger time window, for example, 24 hours to take the exam for a 3-hour, but a 3-hour exam. So if somebody, for example, is in China, they can start the exam anytime within that 24-hour time slot. Write it for 3 hours and then submit it. So that's to support distance learning, basically, and distance examination. Now, one of the things, so what I've done to help you guys prepare for the exam, this is what I kind of always do, is I've gone through all the lecture slides, and I have put down the important terminology in the topics that could be testing topics, or testing terms, or testing terminology. So basically, the things that I recommend you study and know for the exam. I started with the first lecture and ended with the last lecture, and I just took notes on all the important terms. And then I've also categorized the terms in the terminology into different categories. So I have a category called Core Tools, which you'll see, and then Extra Tools. So the core tools will certainly appear on the exam, or could appear on the exam. The extra tools are not really examinable material. They are extra tools that we did cover, but they're not focused. They're not exam-focused tools. So the core tools are for the exam, and then the extra tools are tools we mentioned, but they are not examination for the examination. I have another topic of themes and terms under the maintainability principles subject, or the theme. So like coding conventions, modularity, reusability, analyzability, testability, modifiability, and so on. So these are all the terms that you want to be familiar with in the topic of maintainability, developing maintainable software. And you can see there's overlap between some of these themes. So for example, version control and maintainability principles overlaps with Git, right? And GitLab. So there's an overlap there. And then there are some Git commands in there like checkout, commit, and so on. But basically the version control is a concept. It's a general concept, version control. And Git is a specific solution to the version control concept. So that's how those are related. There are many, many different solutions to version control. The version control problem or the version control challenge. And the ones we use in this module are Git and GitLab. But you know that there are other tools that solve this problem. So that's why there's some overlap. So sometimes there's a subject as a concept, and then there's sometimes a subject as an implementation. I hope that makes sense, or a solution to the concept. Then we have the largest theme in the module, which is object-oriented software design. That covers all the terms that are very helpful to know. And these are also subjects that appear in job interviews, by the way. I uploaded a very special extra lecture that is not examinable at all, but on job interviews and how to prepare for job interviews to the Moodle webpage. You can find a link to that. I hope some people find it interesting. It's certainly interesting if you're going to apply for a job. But for example, could you tell me what your idea of polymorphism is? Could easily be a job interview question. Not only a test question, but if you're applying for a software development job, you are going to get questions like that in the job interview. Then I have another subject, programming in Java. So all the topics related to programming in Java, like interfaces, arrays, strings, exception handling, public versus private, accessor methods, the this keyword, constructors, and so on. In the exam, you will find questions related to the example applications that we discuss in the module. Like we discuss 4 applications repeatedly in the module. One's the Zoo Manager, one's the library booking system, the drawing editor application is mentioned, and the inventory manager is mentioned in the lectures. So you might find questions on the exam that say something like, here's a description of a Zoo Manager application. Can you, given this description of the Zoo Manager application, can you draw a class diagram for this application, that corresponds with this description? Something like that. So you want to be familiar with those applications so they don't take you by surprise during the exam. We cover UML as well. Class diagrams, use case diagrams, all those different diagrams. The good news is, since this exam is take home, so to speak, it's done at home, you can have your UML book, sitting on your desk and look through it during the exam, which is really, really nice. I personally do not have all the UML diagrams memorized. I never have in my whole life. So that's a good thing in this particular environment that we're in, that you can consult, for example, a UML book if you have a question about UML diagrams during the exam. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't study them, because the exam is limited to 3 hours, so you're going to be trying to work fast. You don't want to spend a lot of time searching through the pages of a UML book, for example, because the time will be ticking away quickly, and you'll be trying to beat the clock. We covered design patterns, right? These different design patterns. We didn't cover all the design patterns, thank goodness. We just covered some of the important ones, or some of the ones that are very popular, basically. The one that appeared the most was the MVC pattern, Model View Controller pattern, so that's a little hint for you. And then we had a lecture on open source software and these different kinds of software licenses, permissive licenses and copyleft licenses. And then I have this sort of extra column, which is useful resources. This are all the resources that were pointed out in the exam, in the slides. So I just put them all together on the spreadsheet. These are not examinable per se, these resources. They're just there as a reference in case you want to do some reading around a certain topic. Like maybe you want a good written description of the MVC design pattern, right? So you can find resources related to design patterns in this spreadsheet here. Yes, you'll notice that I have uploaded a sample exam questions to the Moodle page. Now that is not a 3-hour exam, that sample. That just contains a few practice exam questions. I would say that it resembles something like a 1-hour exam. So those practice questions are not as comprehensive and as long as the exam we've actually prepared. But yes, you can find sample exam questions for practicing on the Moodle page. Yes. We will not be uploading a marking scheme, so there will be some uncertainty there in terms of how good your answers are. So that will be good preparation though for the exam. So looking at the sample questions, answering the sample questions, and then doing some extra research to find out how good your answers are. Like in the ideal world, you would study the terms, take the practice or the mock questions, and then compare your answers with answers that you have, like when you've done the research afterwards, so to speak. You do the research for the answers, and then you compare the answer you put down before you did your research with after you did your research. And I'm assuming that you guys have a communication channel on social media that you can discuss example answers with and share example answers with for the practice questions. Now I cannot go through all of these terms because it would take a long time. I don't know exactly how long, but it would take a very long time. But if there are any terms that you'd like me to go over now, or questions that you have now, I'm happy to go ahead and try to answer some questions about confusing terms or confusing topics. Probably what we should do, if you guys are interested, probably what we should do is have another revision lecture closer to the exam time in January. That's probably what we should do. And then you guys can have a chance to ask more questions. But we won't simply be re-delivering the material I won't simply be, re-delivering the material in the revision lecture, because all of the delivery is online, right? All of the lectures are recorded. You can see all the, all the recordings. I won't just sit here and do the mock exam for you, because that would be robbing you of an important educational opportunity, right? If I did the exam questions for you, I just ran through them, then it would ruin the whole exercise. It would ruin the whole exercise of giving you questions in the first place. However, if you guys have specific questions, very specific questions, it's not like, can you do the mock exam for us in front of us? Then I'm happy to answer very specific questions. Like, can you tell us what inheritance is, or something like that. I can point out one thing that I think is a little bit subtle in the object-oriented software design category, this subclass/superclass terminology and the child and parent terminology. So those are actually the same thing, but for better or for worse, different programming languages use different terminology. So some like Java might use slightly different terminology than C++ and so on. But the concept of subclass and superclass in child and parent classes are the same. They're different terms for the same concepts. And that happens sometimes in software engineering, and it is confusing. So that's just a little thing that I noticed when I was preparing this Excel spreadsheet for you. And it's not something we explicitly went over in the module, I think. There's sometimes this overlapping terminology or even clashing terminology. Yeah. Are there any specific other questions about the exam or terminologies? I guess that everybody is really thinking about the coursework right now. And that is perfectly understandable. If I was a student, I would be thinking about the coursework. I would be working on the coursework every day. I would even be working on it in the evenings and in the weekends. I was a crazy student that worked in the evenings and on the weekends on my coursework because I wanted to get, a good education, I guess. And I was not one of those party guys. I should have spent probably a little bit more time partying, but I didn't. I was a studyholic, and I was working very hard on the courseworks and the exams and studying and all that stuff. Okay, I'll wait a few more minutes for questions. Otherwise, we don't have to have a long discussion. We can just have a short discussion today. This lecture is being recorded, and I can send out maybe some questionnaire or something if people want to have a revision lecture, another revision discussion closer to the exam time. Like, for example, maybe 1 week before the exam. Okay, so somebody asked, once we click the start on the exam, there's a 3-hour countdown. Actually, in past years, this is true. In past years, the exam was administered using a system called Rogo, which is a fully automated exam system where you have a start button, and then you have a timer, and then you have a submit button, and it's a very strict timer. This time, I believe the way it works is you will download the exam from Moodle as a Word document, then write the exam, and then upload your exam answers in the Word document. So I believe that's how it's going to work this time. And there was a discussion about this with the teaching committee, and it was a collective decision to have this procedure, I believe, for all of the exams, to make a uniform procedure for all of the exams. And I believe the reasoning is mostly due to support distance learning, so to support taking the test in different time zones. So for example, if we had a Rogo test that started exactly at 3 p.m. on a Friday, then that 3 p.m. GMT time might be something like midnight in Shanghai. Right, 3. I guess it would be 10 p.m. in Shanghai. So we didn't want to have this problem where we're not really supporting distance learning right now by having the same Rogo setup as in previous years. Yes, so I believe, I don't know for sure 100%, but I believe the countdown does start is when you download your file. So there'll be a time when you download your file that will be logged, and then there'll be a submission time which will also be logged. And that's what that's the idea. So how do you submit it? You upload it. So you download the Word file, you write your answers in the Word file, and then you upload it back. That's how it works. And that's how you submit, your submission is done. And there will certainly be more information about this forthcoming when the exam timetable is released. But that is my understanding so far. That is my current understanding. For the coursework, I don't think this is the best time to be answering coursework questions. For coursework questions, I recommend you post your question in the coursework questions channel on the Teams. So we set up a special channel called coursework questions, and we're trying to collect all the questions in one place, so that, the idea is that when we answer the question for once, that answer is then distributed to the entire class, and it's all in a central location. It quickly gets chaotic to answer the questions in different information spaces. Like, you don't want to have to search, an email list, plus different channels, plus the lectures channels to find out the answers to these questions. Yes, I would agree that the real exam is roughly 3 times longer than the mock exam. Yes, I would agree with this. I would also mention that your coursework is worth 75% of the module, and the exam is worth 25%. So that's also something to think about. So if you're sinking a lot of time and energy into the coursework, then that's appropriate, right? You could theoretically skip the exam. I wouldn't do that. But if you did a really, really outstanding job on the coursework, you could actually skip the exam. I definitely wouldn't recommend that. But, you know, you could get, for example, a 65% on the coursework or 70% on the coursework and then, you know, be done. I wouldn't recommend that strategy, but it's theoretically possible. Yeah. Any other questions related to the exam? Okay, well, I hope that you guys like the spreadsheet that we put together for you. And, you know, this is a kind of exam preparation strategy in itself. Going through all the slides and making notes about the important terms and the important subjects and putting it all on one piece of paper or on one spreadsheet to give you an overview. This is a nice exercise. So if you don't have this kind of spreadsheet for your other modules, I would recommend going through this same exercise for your other modules. Like you can make this spreadsheet. You don't need me to make it. You could make this spreadsheet for your other modules if it doesn't already exist, right? And that in itself is a very nice way to prepare for the exam or to help prepare for the exam. You know, you could even add some information like to each term, like a yes, no, or maybe. Like imagine you think, okay, I know exactly what classes' instances are, and then putting a little tick, a little check next to that, like I know that, I don't have to look at it any further. And then maybe identifying the ones that you don't understand and putting like an X next to those. And then maybe there are some that are like you might know but you're not confident about, and you could put like a different symbol next to those, like a question mark. So I would recommend doing this kind of exercise for all of your exams. Not only this semester, but every future exam as well. In fact, I just realized when I was saying this right now, I gave a short lecture on how to prepare for exams in general. It's not a full lecture, it's just like a 10-minute video on how to prepare for exams in general, for any exam. And I will post that on the Moodle page. I forgot about that I did that, but I did do it. And I will post a link to that exam preparation strategy on the Moodle page. Yeah, I recorded it. I gave a lecture and I started talking about how to prepare for an exam. So I recorded, and I was recording it at the time. And this was years ago. This was like 3 years ago. But the recording is still there. It's still publicly available. And I forgot about it. But now I remembered it, and I can put a link to it in the on the Moodle page. Okay, well, I guess we'll end there. If there are no other questions about the exam, we can wrap it up. And I wish everybody good success with the coursework. It is definitely a challenging coursework. It's a challenging module as well. Like this module in general is not easy. Challenging coursework, challenging module. On the other hand, when you do survive these kinds of modules, you realize that they're quite a learning experience. You go back and look back and you think, oh yeah, I definitely learned a lot in that module. The easier a module is, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the easier a module is, usually the less you learn. That's not always true, but it's been my experience that if a module is super easy, then I don't learn very much. Like I've had modules where the only thing that happens is like an essay. You know, you submit an essay at the end, and that's the whole module, and then those are the kind of modules where I didn't learn very much, right? So this is the kind of module where you do learn quite a lot. You know, every hour that you're spending on your coursework is an hour that you're learning something. You're learning multiple things. You're learning the tools that you're using. You're learning Java. You're trying to implement the design pattern concepts. So there's a huge amount of learning going on for all those hours that you're working on your coursework. Okay, I hope everybody also has a good weekend, and we will talk again in the near future.